Hello everyone, welcome to tutorial number 5, masks and tracking with a little bit of isolating grain and eliminating it. Really quick, I want to cover this. I've gotten a lot of questions about 5D to RGB, which is a conversion program. So if you're used to shooting with footage that needs to be converted like MTS files or M2T files, you know that you have to go into either Final Cut or whatever your editing system is and convert them into something that can be edited versus the ultra compressed version that is on the cards. And this is a really great program called 5D to RGB. And my settings are to go in and grab one of these MTS files out of the stream folder from my GH2, and I capture at ProRes 444, REC 709. I choose none for this, and I don't touch anything else. And then I click convert, and it sends it where I want to go. It names it as a movie file, gives it a nice ProRes conversion and wrapper, and it's really great. I've been using it for about a month now, and I really like it. You get really great low noise, no baked in gamma files to work with in either After Effects or whatever your editing and color correction program might be. Okay, so let's get started on this right here. I'm going to create this shot right here from this shot right here. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to go into Photoshop and we're going to select the leaf tool from the brush and paint a bunch of leaves into Photoshop like so. And here's some more leaves going in. And then we're going to bring those into After Effects, turn all the layers on, some of them anyway, move them around, lay them in over the top, animate them, do some color correction, kill some grain on the face, just isolate the face because the stucco doesn't need to be treated, and then we're going to export that out. So there's your brief overview. It'll go from this to this, and let's get started. Okay, don't save. Okay, so this is the Photoshop. This is going to Photoshop here. I have a 2048 by 1600 image. I went square because I want to overlap my frame. I want to make sure that any blurring or masking that I do doesn't clip. So that's why I went larger than my frame size. And so here you can see, if I turn some of these layers off, you can see what was done. Just sort of painted a bunch of different random leaf layers into Photoshop, exported that, and then don't save. Okay, so then I brought this the PSD into After Effects, and the way you do that is you can, whichever way you choose to import, I right click, import file, and then I'm going to go to the folder that I saved that file into, the leaves.psd. I'm going to select it. If you want to go composition, retain layer sizes, so I'm going to click open. Here it'll give you another pop-up if you want to maintain editable layer styles, or if you want to merge the layer styles into the footage. All that is if you want to retain like drop shadow and anything you might have added style-wise to your layers, you can bring that stuff into After Effects as well, and After Effects will try and see if it has a comparable setting that it can use to apply to that footage so it looks the way that it did in Photoshop. And then I would click OK, but in this case I'm going to click cancel because I've already done it. I brought it in. And so now you can see I've got each individual layer from Photoshop here in the timeline, and I can turn them on or off respectively. And then you can, what I've done is I've taken these and I've put them here in this composition. I've changed the opacities, I've blown some of them up, I've moved them around, and in the case of these ones that have keyframes on them, I've animated them. So if we scrub through this really quick, you can see there's a little bit of motion, just enough. It's a really simple animation. All I did was, this was the default state here. I set a keyframe here in the middle by just clicking the position stopwatch. If you want to get to position, let's take one that doesn't have one. You just hit the P key on the keyboard, position will come up. And if I want to keyframe the position of this, I click the stopwatch. There, it set a keyframe. So then what I wanted to do is that I wanted it to be in this position, and I wanted it to move from well, here, we'll just do a real quick animation. I don't even know what layer this is, but we'll just go to the beginning. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the slider. Okay, so it's those leaves right there. And it'll move from that position, see how it's sliding across, to the position it was set. And then if I want to, where the animation ends, I can move it back by lining up those things. So now that those leaves will move out and then back in. But I don't want that in my animation, so I'm going to hit Command Z 3 times, undo all that, and show you how this is overlaid into, well, it's not right now because the green killer's on. Let's turn this off. So here is our raw footage. Let's zoom out so you can see. So here's our framing and our original footage, and we have this stucco on the wall. Now, this stucco on the wall is going to prove to be a problem here in a little bit, and I'll show you why. But for now, let's take the leaf cookies, which was the comp we were just into, and turn that on so you can see that this has basically become almost a projection, and it's laid these shadows really nicely over our footage. Let's go ahead and take a snapshot by clicking snapshot and then A/B it. Let's turn that off, and you can see here's our before, here's with the leaves, before with the leaves. And this is what this is the look that I wanted to do when we were shooting. I just didn't have enough time to grab some branches or some cookies and break up this light so that this wall wasn't just totally flat behind her. And since I can track my footage, which we'll go over here in a second, but first I want to cover just the rest of the color correction that's going on in here. So right now it's just our raw clip here, and our cookies that we've created laid over the top with the animation. No grain killer yet. Actually, this is grain killer 2. I was going to use as a demonstration. Let's go ahead and get rid of it because we're not going to use it right now. Let's cover, I've got the baseline color correction, which is our GH baseline. Tony Scott gear laid over the top, give it some blue-green. Can adjust the exposure with this, darken it up a little bit, make it seem a little bit more like night. Let's grab a little bit of saturation. You can see that it's bringing in the blood smears on her cheek back in, and then a little bit of mix over the top to make everything a little denser and a little more yellow green sort of. There we go, look at that, it's nice. And so that's our completed shot without the grain killer, because we're going to get into that in a second. But that's our basic color correction. If you want to see the mix on that, we can select all those and tap the T key. Oops, T key for transparency or opacity, and opacity. That's how I remember it for T key. And you can see mix is mixed down to 49, saturation to 100, exposure 62, Tony Scott's 38, the baseline gamma correction is 100%, and then of course the grain killer is 100%, or the leaf cookies are 100 and the grain killer is at 100. And this null object we'll get into in a second is where our tracking data is being applied to. So let's go ahead and hit T again to collapse those. And let's get into camera tracking. I'll show you the tracking data. We'll select the null, and you can see that I've tracked this little dot. Let's turn all these off. Let's go cookies and all the effects, and let's turn the null off for a second. There's this little dot, little hole in the stucco, this little black dot that, while this is moving around, I shot this with the Cowboy Studio handheld rig, and what I found with that is it's really good at not rotating on the Z-axis. So when things move, they tend to move side to side, up and down, diagonally, but they don't tend to rotate, on the Z-axis. Tend to rotate, left to right. So I don't need to get really intense with my tracking. I just need to track where this dot goes, and then I can apply anything I want to this scene, and it'll stick to this wall. So here's the null object, and you can see I've already done the tracking data. Let's hit U, and you can see here's all the tracking data applied. But you wanted to learn how to track, so let's go ahead and learn that. What we're going to do is we're going to go, I'm actually going to delete all of these keyframes. Let's open them up. And the way you do that is you just hit turn off the position keyframe key, and then I'm going to open up this layer for the sake of argument, and I'm going to hit reset, and that's going to go right to the center of the frame. Okay, so that's null object called null1. Just for training purposes, so you don't get lost, we're going to call this tracking node. And then we're going to click our footage that we want to track. We're going to go over here to our tracker. If you don't have a tracker open, you go up to Window and just check the checkbox on the tracker. If it's here, see what I had there? It went away. Let's bring it back. Click tracker. Should come up down here. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. And so with the footage selected, I'm going to click track motion. And that is going to bring my footage up in this window. And it's going to ask me what I want to track by bringing up this track point and telling me to put it somewhere. Well, it's not telling me to, but I'm telling you right now. So I want to expand it a little bit because I want to be able to see what's going on. And then clicking in this space here between the two boxes allows me to grab this and drag it. It will magnify whatever it passes over, and I want to go right on top of this little black spot. Right there. Okay, and I'm going to zoom in by hitting Command plus, and then Command plus again. That would be Control plus for you PC people. And I'm going to adjust this. I only want to track this little tiny dot, and I want this to sit wherever the highest bit of contrast is in this. I'll get a more accurate track if I put this crosshair right on the point of highest contrast. And so now you can see if I move this around, yeah, we're good there. So I want to track that. And the larger I make this is the search area. This is your tracking picture. It basically takes a picture and then looks for that picture in every frame, every successive frame. And then this big box is your search area. So the bigger your search area, the longer it's going to take to solve your track. The smaller, the easier it will be. So the smaller I make this, the faster it will go, and that should pretty much do it. And I actually want to back up to the first frame, so I'm actually going to do that here. And I'm going to move this so that it looks like that's in the right spot. Okay, so we're going to track from the beginning point to the end point here. In fact, let's zoom out. Let's click here and then just hit the minus key to zoom out. And you can see right here, here's the area of my footage that has been cropped to, that we talked about by setting your beginning and end points. In another tutorial we talked about and saying trim comp to work area. Okay, so it's going to track just my work area. And the way I do that is I go down here. I'm just going to track position. I'm not going to track rotation or scale because it doesn't really move, it doesn't really scale or rotate. And then I'm going to click the play or analyze forward button, and it's going to just yeah, of course it's going to eat up all my memory. Yeah, right there. In fact, I'm going to stop for a second and purge. I'm going to go edit, purge, all. There, I got more memory. Okay, and then I'm going to track forward. There we go. That's tracking nicely. That'll just take a few seconds to finish. There it is. It's just plowing right through that track. And done. Okay, it's done tracking. So now we want to make sure that your target is set to your null object, or what we call the tracking node. So I'm going to edit target, and I'm going to make sure that a tracking node is selected, and click OK. And I'm just going to click apply. And I want X and Y, I want up and down, right and left to be tracked. I'm going to click OK. And there it is, it's tracked. You can see here, here's all the tracking data has been applied in the form of keyframes to the footage, to this tracking node, which if we turn the visibility back on, let's turn all of these, actually let's just turn it, there we go. You can see it right there. So it is tracked to that little dot that we were just looking at, and as the footage moves, see the node moves with it. So anything we attach now to that node will move with the node, which means it'll move with the shot. So everything was set up, I believe, here on number 2, but I think we can either 1 or 2 we can either go with. So what I want to do is I want to take my leaves, my exposure. I want to attach them to the node so that everything moves with this tracking node. So to do that, you select, we're selecting the exposure, which is this mask here, which darkens everything outside of her little range here, and then the leaf cookies, which is all the leaves that we're projecting onto the wall. So I want to control click or command click those two layers, and then grab this pick whip here, and I'm going to parent. This is the parent. I'm going to parent it to the tracking node. So now you can see that both of these list their parent as track 6, and now as the shot moves, these move with it. And that's tracking. It's that simple. The grain killer is only being applied to her face, and I'll show you why in a second in part 2, but that's part 1, masks, and we'll go ahead and render this out so you can see what this shot looks like. And so here's that shot. And you can see now as we scrub through that everything looks like it moves with the shot. So as the camera's bouncing around, everything on the wall sticks to the wall, and the shadows that are animated, you know, sort of drift across her and the wall together, and it all looks real. It's kind of an effect shot, but it's also exposure and grading and correction and a little bit of masks and tracking. So now let's get into the masks and see how we killed the grain on her face, at least reduced it drastically enough to where it's tolerable. And that's in part 2.